alive and well, give blood. We are no longer here, give organs. If we've done those two things, we made a positive impact on society, considering the fact that one person can provide life for improve the quality of life for 25 individuals. You may not have a need today, you may not have a need tomorrow, but sometime in your lifetime, you or someone you may know will have a need. I have a strange kind of a background. I was a state lawmaker for 16 years, the Cook County Recorder of Deeds for 6, and 19 years running this office. 10 years in the military, used to jump out of perfect good airplanes. You never worry about the jump, it's always a sudden stop. Then I played 8 years of professional baseball for Chicago Cubs.
Wow.
And I also taught school for 33 years, and I coach a gymnastic team called the Jesse White Tumblers.
Wow.
We do about 1,500 shows a year, and our mission is to help young people to grow tall and straight. And out of our 225 young people, we have 51 in college, and we give each one between $3,000 to $8,000 toward education. It's important for us to make sure that our young people are educationally sound, but we also want them to figure out a way to love their fellow man and woman and never ever dislike anyone because of race, creed, or color. There's this big, wide, wonderful world out there. We have to figure out a way to live in peace and harmony with one another. We start with our young people.
That's right.
So with that, I just want you to know that my doctor is Dr. Rana. Now, Dr. Rana is a Pakistani. And
Feel sorry for you.
I mean,
Feel sorry for you.
no. Let me tell you my story. My knee started to bow, and so I went to Northwestern Memorial Hospital. I indicated that I needed some surgery done on my knee, so they examined me, and then they said, well, we're going to operate on one knee in 2 weeks, and 6 months later, we'll operate on the other knee. I said, no, I want you to do both at the same time. So, I left the hospital, and they asked me to sign a stack of papers that I had because they never do 2 knees at the same time. So I left the hospital, and I was walking down the street, and one of my Italian friends said to me, Mr. Secretary, I heard you're going to have some operation on your knee. I said, no, on my knees. He said, the both of them? I said, yeah, the both of them. So, as it turned out, I was in the hospital for 10 days for surgery, recovery, and rehab, and I walked out of the hospital free of pain and free of after effects. This young man did ask me this question, who's going to operate on you? I said, Dr. Ryan. He said, is he a foreign doctor? I said, yeah, I think he's from either India or Pakistan. Is he going to let a foreign doctor operate on you? I said, I don't care where he's from. I don't care how he spells his name. If he's a good doctor, that's all I want. Yeah. This man, I sent 45 people to him, and all of them have had 100% recovery and a healthy lifestyle as a result of it. So as I leave here, going back to Chicago, it took me an hour and 30 minutes to get from downtown.
Yeah.
That may not be the sign. But you know what I'm talking about. But I do want you to know that I'm a friend of your community.
Thank you.
And I'm only a phone call away. And whenever
Anytime you have a function, invite Jesse, he will come.
Wow.
He is the closest friend of Indo-Pak community. I am very proud of being his quality assistant.
And one other thing, next time you invite me to an event, make sure it's not going to take me an hour and a half to get
I
here.
am so sorry.
I have security. I take away with 750,000 driver's licenses a year. And this afternoon, we had some events, and I dismissed my security force.
He did.
And so then I had to drive out here by myself. And of course, one quick thing that happened, and I'll step down. I left my phone. I have a flip phone.
Last time I found your phone.
Yeah, I have a flip phone. And so this fellow was being robbed in the parking lot. So he said, put everything you have on your car. So he put his money, his wallet, his checkbook, all the car. Then he pulled out the flip phone. He said, no, you can keep that. That's the kind of phone I have. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you. And thank you for giving, thank you for caring, and thank you for making a difference in this world. Because we work together, wonderful things happen, and some wonderful things are happening here at this institution, where I know for a fact that teaching is taking place and learning is in the equation. Thank you.
Your Honor, stay here. We want to have a photo op. So stay here. No. Just let me introduce the President of the AFME, National President of AFME, and our Honorable Shrimati, Her Highness is here. Please come over in front. This is the Secretary of State, a very big shot for me. She came all the way, he came all the way from Chicago, 1.5 hour drive. The very busy man had a 5 event.
And she came from 7,000 miles away.
Yes. Okay. She's an outstanding fighter for the minority rights. So is Jesse White. He's always fighting for the minority rights. And all these events that he told you that he taught and he played, he did it in a very short time. He's 39 years old, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to know. He's in a good shape at this age. I would like to look like him when I'm 39.
How close are you?
Thank you. Excuse me,
So, Your Honor.
I have to get to like Chicago.
I know.
More events.
Get the photos. Hurry up, fast.
Yes, welcome her. So 5 more minutes, please.
Phone photos get.
Okay.
Sit down, please. Yes.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Get the photos from him.
Yes.
Mr. Rajput, get the photos.
Okay, we'll take in just 2 minutes. Yeah, so.
Amitabh, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you for coming here. It's my honor and pleasure to welcome you for your dedication and sincerity towards our cause. We are honored here. Padma Shri.
You could go back here.
Teesta Setalwad. She is very eminent journalist and activist, and we are very proud to have her. And she is fighting a fight which is needed in this day and age. She is challenging the government and she is challenging the press, which regular press, because press is sold out and there is no free and liberal and independent voices. She is one of them. Now I asked Dr. Tajuddin Ahmed, who is the president of our Chicago chapter. He is very dedicated philanthropist, and also he is very dedicated, and his contribution to Northwest Suburban College is immense. May Allah reward him, bless him. And I'm asking humbly Dr. Tajuddin Ahmed to come and introduce our great speakers and other dignitaries to you. Now, Dr. Tajuddin Ahmed.
Assalamu alaikum. Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wal asr. Innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilus salihati wa tawassaw bil haqq wa tawassaw bis sabr. Dear Teesta, respected Jesse White, Dr. Khutbuddin, of course our Sher Rajput, looks like he truly a Sher, but more than Rajput. So dear friends, thank you for coming today. Because Jesse was in such a rush, we had to really start the meeting going far before we could get to our food. So thank you for your expediting the evening. We have gathered here on the platform of AFME, American Federation of Muslims from Indian origin, and at Northwest Suburban College. I happen to wear both the hats. I'm the corporate chairman of the Northwest Suburban College here, and quite an active person in the AFME that you all know. But I had a very good fortune of meeting people like Teesta in the past. That includes Rajendra Sachar. I had a good fortune of arranging a meeting for him in Chicago. And when he was surrounded by the Lahoris, Pakistanis, it was a very interesting experience. They won't let him go after the meeting was over because he was narrating his story of born, raised in Lahore, and went to schooling there. It was a very interesting day that day. Then our another pioneer in this field, and then lastly the Sheila Rashid that came in here, their prodigy, maybe following Teesta. To introduce her, I did not know where to start, and I went through all the YouTubes where she was giving talks all over the country, including several such occasions in the United States. Apparently, she comes from a very illustrious family, mostly legal-minded grandfather and her father worked with. In fact, when I read that grandfather was involved in representing the Jallianwala fight that they had in Amritsar massacre, and he was involved in such time on. But instead of following the legal profession, and when I read that she was, the very first time she became active in Bhiwandi riots, 1984.
Oh my God.
It was a kind of eye-opening experience for me, because I go to Bhiwandi whenever I go to India now. That whole city is revived, and the educational system, Konkan Muslim Society has completely revolutionized the weavers into education, including women education. It's a very large campus. So I always think of 1984, there was the first communal riot that took place, and that's where she determined herself to do something about to save the Indian democracy and to really help out the oppressed and to give them proper justice. And from then on, her journey continued, especially year 2002, which is kind of a worse landmark, where under the supervision of Narendra Modi and BJP had a massive massacre of Muslims unjustly. And from then on, looks like she has totally latched on to this cause of helping minorities. And I was looking at any such agitation or any such injustice is done, whether that is Christians or Sikhs or Muslims or Dalits or women, she is up there in the front. I really don't know how she gets the courage at a time when people are so scared even to talk anything against the government that is in place right now. I really honestly appreciate what she is doing, and to coin the word which is kind of not very popular nowadays, she's a true jihadi in my opinion. So I'm sure people will not be misquote her, that she will probably not be arrested by the time she goes back to India. It's a real struggle to give justice to the people who are oppressed all over the place, whether this is a ongoing rape scene in India, ongoing discrimination, lynching people. She is up there. I have no idea how she continues to have that kind of energy and that motivation to help the oppressed. So with that brief introduction, instead of going on and on, I think you can all really go back to her YouTubes and internet and just Google her up. You will be surprised how much you learn about her courage and her contribution to Indian democracy, and especially to bring justice to the minorities of all kind. With that introduction, I would like to invite her to address us. Thank you very much.
Friends from AFME from the Chicago chapter, Assalamu alaikum, Sat Shri Akal, Jai Bhim, Namaste, good evening. Dr. Tajuddin Saab, Dr. Kutubuddin Saab, Inspector Jesse, who was so kind to be here. I'm sorry we were a bit late. And it's nice, wonderful to be here in this campus of the Northwest Suburban College, which I believe has been built with a lot of commitment towards the community. We need to build more and more such institutions. Friends, I would like to begin by saying that this is a moment for us in India where hope battles despair, where signs of light are often sought to be curbed by deep and evil darkness, and a politics of hate and bigotry is sought to be spread, which is challenging our age-old ability of negotiation and living together. It's not that we've not had problems in the past. We have, which sections of people don't, but a beautiful sense of negotiation, toleration, ability to understand each other has resulted in a civilizational truth that is both inclusive and sometimes exclusive. I keep telling my dear Dalit friends, and I believe the Ambedkarite Association also was with us yesterday in Detroit and might be coming here today as well, that the pains of it needs to acknowledge and needs to the politics of hatred and bigotry without dealing upfront with the fact that this comes and is born out of an ideology that is committed to turning the Constitution and the Republican base of our country inside out. And I'm not saying this with any sense of alarm or exaggeration. If you visit yourself the website of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, it's very, very clear. They believe in the upturning of the constitutional dream, and they believe in converting India from a republican base to a theocratic state. I'd also like to state here that the politics that is itself the politics of Hindutva, we articulate ourselves. Because if we are not clear about ourselves, we alienate a vast section who are committed to ideas of coexistence and toleration. Deal of a supremacist state. I don't think we should call them nationalists. I think we should call them squarely as supremacists. This proto-fascist ideal is not traditional. It's not religious. It is born out of an inspiration from Mussolini's Italy and Hitler's Germany. Their own documents tell us this. It's not something that we are saying. If you read bunch of thoughts of Golwalkar, or if you read We or Our Nationhood Defined. So I would just like to foreground the fact that when we are talking about battling to save India and to come out of its darkest hour, I would say, of the last 70 years, we are talking of putting it back on to a constitutional path, and that is very, very crucial. I cannot but also refer to the fact that we've had a series of extremely painful and extremely ghastly and shameful incidents in the last few weeks, last few months, and the last few years. It's not possible to talk about the last few weeks and the last few years without referring to a tiny 8-year-old girl and the treatment that was meted out to her within a holy place of worship. It is not possible to talk about the last few weeks without talking about what happened to a Dalit woman in Unnao in Uttar Pradesh, where an elected official of the ruling party was involved. It is not possible to talk of the last few years without talking about the incidents of brute lynching that have taken place, and where the deaths and the murders have always been of men of the minority community, the Muslim minority community. And when it comes to beating up, it has been the Dalit minority, whether it is Unnao or elsewhere. And I mention this because it's important to foreground that we are looking at a culture of impunity to the culture of hatred on the streets. And this is not the India you knew, it's not the India we knew, it is not the India that we grew up. But having said that, and because we are speaking here in Chicago today, I would like to say it's not enough to just bemoan the facts. It's not enough to just list the tragedies and feel that we've done our bit. We need to ask ourselves, what can we do? What little bit or more can we do to fight back and to somehow or the other ensure that a politics of civility, a politics of citizenship, and a politics of sobriety returns and predominates India? I think that's the question we need to ask ourselves. what is each one of us doing. It's not enough to pass on a WhatsApp message or not enough to pass on a ghastly WhatsApp video and to bemoan the fact that how horrible things are back home. I'm very impatient with such an attitude. I would always expect that some positive action should be generated. Some involvement should be generated. Some commitment to people back home who are fighting. And believe you me, there are people battling in every district of India on several issues. Be it Adivasis, the indigenous people who are battling for the land, be it Dalits who are battling for dignity and the right of citizenship, be it minorities who are battling just to stay alive and to be free, whether it is political dissenters who are battling for the freedom of expression. The battle is on in India. It's not a lost cause. So I would appreciate many of the wider diaspora far, far thousands of miles away to engage itself more. What we find is lacking is a sense of real engagement. And that engagement means actually sometimes muddying your fingers a little bit. Sometimes getting concerned with things which are difficult. Not simply, like I said, looking at what the sad and sob story is. Within this wider gloomy picture, there are also signs of hope. And I always point to signs of dignity and hope when I speak. Because I believe when we talk about dignity and hope, we get the strength to fight the battles of bigotry and hatred. A few weeks back, there was violence in 2 states in the country over the Ram Navami festival. The violence took place in Bihar and in Bengal, in the neighboring districts of both states, both large states. Both states which are very, very down on the Human Development Index. Both states that are crippled and gripped with poverty. And it was very strange that how the Bihari people did not respond to the attempts by the police towards partisan behavior. And in Bengal, in a town called Asansol, Imam lost his 18-year-old son to mindless violence. And when the Imam Sahib lost his son, his response, spontaneous response, was to warn his angry supporters not to avenge the blood that was spilt so meaninglessly. He actually warned his supporters that if you dare do any vengeful killing in my son's name, I will leave Asansol never to return. It is these moments of utmost sacrifice, courage and dignity that brought a moment of sobriety to that horrendous phase of violence. While the Imam Sahib was giving this message of everlasting peace, you had the elected official, Babul Supriyo, spitting venom and actually threatening to skin people alive. You could see the contrast. You could see the contrast from a man who had lost everything. There can be nothing worse than a parent losing a young son, young child, young girl. And yet this is what his message was. It took me back to 1992, 93, my city, Bombay then, not Mumbai, that burned after the Babri Masjid was demolished on December 6, 1992. On 7th of December, I visited Kurla, one of the neighborhoods that was very brutally affected in the late night violence. When I reached there, I was taken by a group of Muslim families to this one street where this lone Muslim big building stood. And the families who lived there bore witness to what had happened to them the night before. They said we would not have survived but for this one woman, Vimlabai Khaunekar. So I said, who is Vimlabai Khaunekar? She was this wonderful 70 plus then buxom Maharashtrian woman wearing a 9-yard sari. I went and met her. As is my duty, I interviewed her, I talked to her. She is the mother of the Shiv Sena Shaka Pramukh, Bharat Khawnekar. Her son, the night before, completely inebriated, had led a mob to attack that building. And the inmates of that building told me that but for this woman coming out at 1 a.m. and standing in front of her inebriated son and telling him that you can go over only my dead body if you want to attack this building. Even in his inebriated state, he was compelled to bow back in shame and stop what he had intended. So it's these moments of utter heroism you find from ordinary people in the midst of this blood and gore that keeps us going back in India and tells us that we must fight the good fight. We cannot give up without fighting back the forces of darkness and evil. There is no confusion in our minds that we are going through possibly the most difficult period India has gone through post-independence. Civil servants, retired IAS and IPS officers, nearly 50 of them, have written to the Prime Minister following the incidents that I mentioned in the beginning, saying that this is India's darkest hour and that they are not satisfied with his response after the series of incidents that have taken place. I recall also that when the first bolt hit us in late September 2015,